Okay, so I think we'll let around like 5 minutes or for everyone to join. So everyone, in case that you have any questions for Mr. Paul here, you can leave it in the chat box or in the Q&A sections. It's really fun that we talk about like there's no COVID here. and it's really cool to talk like within the next uh, 75 minutes, no COVID. Really optimistic in this room. So feel free to say hi to each other and feel free to say hi to Mr. Paul. He's here. And you can do it in the chat box as well. Morning. But for the information, is this morning in Vietnam, but it's 8 p.m. in Los Angeles right now. So I will start some small talk, some conversation with Mr. Paul first, and I will let everyone to join in the chat box or like to join us later. So hello everyone. So welcome back to our employee experience Monthly Global Expert Chat. Still a long name, but thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm Mia from Triplex. And I know this is the tough time in Vietnam and especially in Ho Chi Minh City, but I hope that you're all doing well and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy as well. So as like me, Dan, and even Mr. Paul say that no COVID at this time, really optimistic. Okay, so the reason why I know Mr. Paul is from his because he is the author of one of the best-selling books, even in Vietnam, and even is translated into Vietnam, into Vietnamese. So that's the reason why I know Mr. Paul. And this is like a guideline for like HR people when you first join and when you first do the human resources job. So thank you so much for being here today. Yeah.
Of course, Mia. Happy to be here.
Yes, and we talk a lot about the topic. So he's very supportive when I mentioned this is the program that really bring the values and benefits to the HR communities in Vietnam. This is a chance to like you can interact directly with him and also like know a lot about the leaders right now. What are the leaders in the world are doing, and what is the difference with the leaders right now from the old time. And that's the reason why we come up with the topics like the futures of workplace leadership. And so I also invite my leader, Mr. Dan Van Rossum, Chief Experience Officer from Triplex. And he's in the call right now. And hey, Dan, how are you?
Good morning. Yes, I'm happy that you don't call me a boss because that makes me feel so old. So thank you for correcting it to leader. I'm okay. More importantly, how are you?
I think we all doing good, and as we promised, really optimistic for today. Really happy.
Good. Yes, we're only gonna focus on the future today and not worry so much about where we are in this moment. That's our focus.
Yes, and I also have one question for you. So as we talk a lot about Gen Z and like younger millennials, I mean like with the people in the range of 1993 to 1999. So we even did a research about that. So we know about like their ideal workplace environment. We know about their way of working. So how about their leaders? So are there any like type of leaders that you think from Gen Z's perspective that they will love? And how about you? Like what is your ideal type of leaders?
Okay. My ideal type of leader, I would have to check if my boss is on the call, but yeah, I think the reason that we did the research last year, and it'd be so interesting to hear Paul's perspective, having studied it at a global level. The reason we did the research is because we know that, this really is a new generation. And even though some people try to say it's not true, I do think they're very different than other people in the workforce. And therefore, leaders need to kind of understand them better. And so I think when we're asking the question, what do Gen Zers want from their leaders? That's probably pretty universal in the sense that they just want someone who understands them. And that understanding is why we did the research, right? So we saw things like they're much more purpose driven. It's much more important that they feel like they get something out of work beyond just the lung at the end of the month, beyond just a paycheck. That it's really important that there's growth and development, right? So actually, the sense of like growth and development personally and professionally ranked higher than even salary when we ask them, what motivates you to take a new job. And so, and also in the ways of working, right? So maybe previously people love to kind of come together, and you see a lot of kind of future of work research globally that's all about, oh, everyone wants to sit in these like big collaborative spaces. But for this Gen Z generation in Vietnam, it's really much more about doing some of that, but also really having the time to focus and be by themselves, and a lot more introversion as well. So, I think when you take all of that together, what do they want from their leaders? They want someone that understands all those facets of who they are and then support them on that, right? So you can only really be, I think, a good leader if you understand the people that you work with. So that understanding becomes very important. So even though I'm not a Gen Zer, I would say that's also what I would expect from someone in any leadership position, that they try to be empathetic, that they try to be compassionate, and try to be understanding of the people that they're working with, and really see people as more than just someone who is there to do a job, to create outputs. They are human beings. They are people. Even Gen Zers, they are people. So it's important to treat them as such. So I think that's what they would expect from their leaders. What I would expect from our leaders, to not forget. And it's nice to have all the HR people. I see the names here on the side. To have them with us today, because I think these are the people in Vietnam that really understand that this is a people business, and we need to focus on the people. So I think that will be an important theme for me today.
Yeah, real great answers. And talking about a leader as well. So I have a chance to go through this article from Mr. Paul. I will put a link here for everyone from SHRN. And yeah, he talked about the servant leadership. So it's not a new type of leaders. But I mean, like people know that, but people not really practice for that. And as I already mentioned with Dan, like I mean, like 1 or 2 weeks ago, about like how we actually have to learn about like talking with the new generations, and now we have to learn about like what are the like interview questions that we have, and for the what about the onboarding. Yeah, so luckily, so we have Mr. Paul Falcone for today, and he will talk really practical about these things, and you can use that and apply that right away to now to your teammates. And so I will let this stage to Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Dan. Dan, your answer was my whole presentation. So actually, we're done. No, it was a perfect answer. Question for you, Mia. Would you like me to do the screen share at this point so people could see the PowerPoint?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Hang on, everyone. I'll do my screen share in just a second. And Mia, tell me when you can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Good. That sounds good. All right, everyone. So this is called The Future of Workplace Leadership. Everyone, I will again thank Mia for this. She reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, Paul, I know your book, and would you consider presenting? And I said, Mia, that was so nice of you to reach out. I would love to share my ideas with an audience in Vietnam. So we'll talk a little bit about comparative practices in the United States because we're facing many of the same things. And I'll have some fun with you as we do this. That's the goal. So a couple of things, everybody. Here's my name, my email address, my website, my LinkedIn address. If any of you would like to send me a LinkedIn invitation, I would be very happy to accept it. And that handsome picture right there is me a couple of years ago. But this talks about my background. So I was head of human resources for Nickelodeon and head of international human resources for Paramount Pictures. Right now, I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer for the Motion Picture and Television Fund, which is not a movie studio, but it supports the entertainment industry in Hollywood. And in the past, I've worked in healthcare, biotech. I've also worked in financial services. So I have a pretty varied background. I also write regularly for SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management. I'm a columnist for them. I write fairly regularly. These are the books that are the ones I'm probably most known for. And towards the bottom, you'll see the 101 Tough Conversations to Have with Employees. That one is this one. So it was translated into Vietnamese. And Mia, so you know, I have a copy of the one on the left, but I've never seen the one on the right. So that's really cool. It's very exciting as a writer to see your books translated into different languages. And again, in this case, that translation is why Mia reached out to me, and I'm very flattered and I'm very honored to be here. I have a new book series coming out in the spring, and it's going to be called the Paul Falcone Workplace Leadership Series. It'll be 5 books. It's published by HarperCollins, but the first book to me is the most important. Book 1 is called Workplace Ethics: Mastering Ethical Leadership and Sustaining a Moral Workplace. That to me will be the anchor book, the most important book, because we don't write enough about that. And I teach the class on ethics at UCLA. There really are no real good books on the topic. So I decided I'm going to write my own. So that'll be out in the spring, and I'm excited about that. Now, in terms of today's presentation, everyone, there are basically 6 categories that I'd like to cover. I will tell you this, there's a lot of information on this PowerPoint. I'm not going to go over everything, but I like to put a lot of information on the PowerPoint so that when you look at it afterwards, you have all that content that you can review on your own time. I also would rather put a lot of information into each slide so that you don't have to write down everything, because it's hard when you're writing too quickly to also listen. I'd rather you listen, and 99% of everything I'm going to say is already on the PowerPoint slide. So point 1 is we want to talk briefly about interviewing. Point 2, to me, is the most important point, which is becoming someone's favorite boss. And I'll tell you why that means so much. Point 3 is stay interviews, is a term you're seeing in the United States a lot more, which talks about when, especially with your best performers, sit with them now before they tender notice. Don't wait for them to come in and give a counteroffer. You don't want to do counteroffers, where counteroffer means they come in and they say, I'm leaving. The employer says, no, you can't leave. I'll give you more money. That's not a good idea. That's too late in the process. You want to sit with your people before they leave. And it's important to do theoretically with all your employees, but particularly important to do with your top performing employees. Point 4 is on the 90-day onboarding program. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we do that. Point 5 is on quarterly, what I call individual development plan, or IDP meetings, where you meet with people about their professional and their career development. And it's so important because what we'll see in the slide deck in just a few minutes, what Dreamplex put together was this idea that people are leaving prematurely, sometimes not even making it to the 1-year mark. And you have the same problem that we have. Now, I don't know that we have it in the United States as pronounced as you have it. That can be a difference. But the point is, how do you keep younger people engaged? And how do you keep them with your company so that they're not constantly chasing other jobs? And finally, point number 6 is involving employees in their own evaluation. So we'll talk about employee performance management and performance evaluation by the time we get to the end of the presentation. So Mia, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Does it sound okay? Can you see it okay? How's everything?
Yeah, it's totally good. Totally
Totally
right.
good?
Yeah.
Totally good. I'll take it. All right, so let's take a look. The Dreamplex Decision Lab paper, the research that you had done called Attract and Retain Gen Z in Vietnam was fabulous. It's the best I've ever seen. I was extremely impressed. And
Thank you so much.
no, you're welcome. Thank you. I mean, that's great. If I were teaching right now, with your permission, I'd be sharing that with all my classes. But basically, again, Gen Z, those born after 1997, so figure anywhere from 18 to 24, 25 years old, somewhere in that zone. Number 2, the most tech savvy group in history, socially connected, digitally driven. There's a desire for entrepreneurship and being a creator. In our country, we call it intrapreneur as opposed to entrepreneur. Everyone knows what the entrepreneur is. That's someone who enjoys starting their own businesses and learning things. But can you take that energy and turn it inwards so that people become an intrapreneur, meaning that they can find new ways of adding value in your own company? That actually leads itself beautifully to anything relating to creativity and innovation. But you have to know how to harness that. You have to know how to channel that. So we'll talk about that too. Now, we know that 63% of Gen Z dreams of being in a startup. 1 in 4 have already made their hobby into a side business. Again, very entrepreneurial. We know that learning skills and acquiring new knowledge is more important than salary and benefits. But look at the last 2 bullets. Only 8%, according to the study, only 8% of Gen Z prefers in-person communication with their coworkers. Instead, they prefer instant messaging. So I put there the words red flag. Red flag means that's a problem, that's a concern. So I just want you to think about that and hold it in your memory for a few minutes. Because the next point says 90% of Gen Z wants their manager's feedback weekly. And it said some even want it daily. And those 2 things do not equate. They do not connect. There's something that to me really stood out about that study, which could give us a key to how we want to approach this in terms of making things better in the workplace so that those in Gen Z will remain with your company for longer periods of time. Okay, so the challenge, retaining Gen Z talent when their tenure oftentimes is less than a year, sometimes 6 months, 9 months, 10 months, but then they're gone. That's a problem. We suffer from it here too in the United States. Number 2, designing a workplace experience that taps into the hearts and minds is a wise employer investment and initiative. So really, if you're a human resources practitioner and you're on this call, or if you're an operational manager, or you're a business owner, this is actually a very, very wise call for you to be listening in on, because it hopefully will give you some ideas for how to make the whole situation better at work. So let me go back to that, what I call the disconnect. In other words, this doesn't add up. This doesn't make sense. Only 8% of Gen Z prefers in-person communication. They'd rather be doing instant messaging. Yet 90% of them want their manager's feedback at least once a week. So the 3rd bullet says they want more personalized developmental feedback, but less human connection with their bosses and their peers. If you think about that, it's the equivalent of, now I'm a parent. If any of you are parents and you have teenagers at home, and I think this audience may be a little too young for that, but you may, you know, when your daughter turns 13 years old, the last thing they want is their parents. And you can take a study of them and say, would you like more parenting or less parenting? And they're all going to raise their hands and they're going to say, we don't want any parenting. We're old enough. Thank you. Okay, that model is an equivalent here. The younger workers are saying they don't want feedback. They don't want to talk to, excuse me, they're saying they don't want communication. They don't want to talk to people. They just want an instant message. Yet at the same time, they're saying, but we really want feedback and we want communication. So those 2 things don't totally add up in my world from what I've seen dealing with human beings for 3 decades. So here's something that's important, and I'm in healthcare. I attended a webinar or a seminar where the doctor said, Gen Z is the loneliest and most socially isolated generation on the planet. even more so than the elders living in retirement homes. Because they said Gen Z grew up so much on technology that the technology replaced the human connection. So the second bullet says most new jobs are exciting for about 6 months because of the learning curve. And okay, but however, something is missing that's keeping the young adults tied to their company beyond that initial learning phase. Hence, the turnover is usually happening between 9 months, 12 months, 15 months, somewhere in there they're leaving. And what is the disconnect? What is missing? That's the question. So my solution is human connection with peers and with their immediate supervisor is key. Selfless leadership builds upon human connection. It talks about trust. It talks about forging personal relationships that can last over the long term. So the third bullet says becoming someone's favorite boss is the noblest goal because it personalizes relationships and builds connection that carries on once the initial learning curve of the job ends. So think about that, everyone. We all are so busy that managers may not be investing enough personal time with workers. And the workers, being young, 20, 22, 24 years old, they're thinking they want less communication, yet they want more feedback. But communication and feedback are the same thing. So you can't want one, but not the other. So there's a confusion, which often happens in the younger cohorts. A lot of times younger workers are still trying to define themselves. As the wiser ones, as the ones who have more experience, as the leaders and the managers, we can hopefully use the data in that report, which again was a stunning report, but look to the wisdom, not just the facts, but where's the wisdom in this? Where's the knowledge? Where's the learning for all of us? And I think the learning curve means that we need to build stronger interpersonal connection with these workers by becoming their favorite boss. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Practically speaking, again, I know they say they want to be left alone. That's the Gen Z. It was also my daughter when she was 13 years old, right? I hear them saying they only want to IM you and one another, but not have to talk to anybody. I understand that. If that were the case, however, they wouldn't be desperate for more feedback. And again, technology tends to lead to isolation. This is the first generation in human history that is so overly connected that it might be at the expense of the human connection that we've all had that helps us fall in love with our boss and fall in love with our company. So again, last bullet says what they believe they want and what they actually need may be two different things. And if you would just kind of keep that in your mind as we move forward, the rest of the presentation will make sense. Now, you may not agree with all of it, and that's okay. But for now, for my sake, stay with that thought and let's see how it plays out. Okay, listen to the needs outlined in the study, customize the work experience to focus on personal and professional development and everything else that they want. Networking and communication, corporate social responsibility, environmentalism, and there's that word, intrapreneur, the entrepreneurial spirit, helping them be creative and innovative within your company, not having to leave your company to do that. But reject the premise that this younger generation believes to be true, that without true human connection, without healthy interpersonal relationships, they'll continue to run, even ever in search of some form of elusive career happiness. That's why they leave. After 6 months, the job is boring. 12 months, they leave. That's your problem. There's no connection to their boss, maybe to their coworkers, but primarily to their boss. For those of you on this call, you're bosses. You're either owners or you're managers. You're the leaders. So let's talk about how to do that, or at least how we're teaching in the United States. Part one, the interviewing piece. What I call it is piercing candidates' hearts and minds. It's both. You have to challenge them intellectually, that's their mind, but you have to pierce their heart. You want to make them fall in love with your company. That's really important. And how do you do that? And when you look in the United States at the Gen Z, these are the top 5 things that they want, which is pretty much exactly what they're looking for in Vietnam. So again, this is universally human. This is across the planet. But what I will focus on is the 5th point, professional and career development. That's the way to help them fall in love with your company because that's what they want. Okay. The other things they want too, don't get me wrong, but in the United States, that 5th bullet is the one where we probably have the most leverage. We have the most ability to make a change or make an impact. So take a look. It starts at the interview stage. When I interview someone, The questions I ask are very selfless. I am interested in getting to know them. I want to know what their wants are. I want to know what their needs are. I want them to tell me, and hopefully they develop some level of trust with me, what's really important to them. So some of the questions that I ask, as an example, tell me what's important to you, Mia, at this point in your career. Dan, what are the 2 or 3 things that you're looking for in terms of your selecting your next company or your next position? What would have to change at your present company for you to consider remaining there? Why would accepting this position make sense for you at this point in your career in terms of serving as your next logical move in career progression? How would this position help you build your resume and LinkedIn profile if you were to get the job? And again, if you were to accept the position, how would you explain it to a prospective employer 3 to 5 years from now? Or 2 to 3 years from now, whatever. Do you understand the mindset? The mindset in the interview historically has been, I'm the company, you're the job candidate, tell me what you can do for me, period. That's it. It didn't go 2 ways. It wasn't the employer asking the candidate, but what can we do for you as well? And so especially when you ask that last question, if you were to accept this position, how would you explain it to a prospective employer 2 to 3 years from now? In other words, why would this job have made sense for you in your career? And the person will sit back and say, I've never been asked that question before. Well, the reason why I'd be really interested, and now they start telling you. And now it's like, oh, wow. What they walk away with is an experience where the person who is interviewing them, who doesn't even know them, is the first time they've ever met, was asking them questions about themselves and what are your needs and what are your professional development goals? And why would a job like this make sense for you in terms of building your LinkedIn profile? In the United States, up until a few years ago, you would never ask a candidate about their LinkedIn profile. That's not my business. That's up to the candidate to worry about. Now we become a coach, and the coaching starts before the relationship even begins. The coaching can begin at the interview stage before they're even hired. And the candidate walks away with a very strong impression. This is the first company I've gone to that was asking about me and what my needs are. And that's really cool. That's really nice. And if it comes down to 2 different jobs and which one do I accept? They're probably going to accept the one with the employer who really cared about them. That's just human nature. That's not Gen Z or anything else. That's just how people react. So think about that, everybody. Would 1 or 2 or 3 of these questions or similar questions make sense for you to add to the front of your interview so that you can get to know the people and hopefully they get more, there's a word in English, we call it vulnerable. Vulnerable in a healthy sense means they trust you and they'll share something with you, even if it's a little uncomfortable. So sometimes in an interview, someone says to me, well, you know, Paul, I normally don't say this in an interview, but, and as soon as they do that, I know they're being totally honest with me. That's healthy vulnerability. There's a trust there. They're willing to tell me something that they normally wouldn't tell someone else. And that's when I know I've made a strong connection with that person before we've even hired them. So let's look at some more things. If this was about really, what do you do in the interview process? I want to talk about this idea of becoming someone's favorite boss. In the human resources world, we talk about employee engagement. We talk about employee satisfaction. We talk about productivity. We talk about all, motivation. What are all these things and these concepts? What do they boil down to? And if I can use one phrase or one construct that will help everyone keep it center in their mind, it's how do you become someone's favorite boss? Have you ever been someone's favorite boss? Do you want to become someone's favorite boss? And this is the ultimate in employee engagement. So here's how it works. If we were doing this live and we were in a workshop, we don't have the time to do that now, but I would say, okay, everyone, tell me about your favorite boss. What made that person your favorite boss? And someone raises their hand and they say, well, I had a boss who I adored. She always listened to me. She always made me feel special. She made me feel like my opinion mattered. Someone else raises his hand. He said, well, my favorite boss challenged me to do things I didn't even think I could do. I mean, he had more faith in me than I had in myself. Then another person raises their hand. And the bottom line is what you're realizing is when people talk about the best boss they've ever had, they're talking about what says rule, beingness trumps doingness. Beingness is who you are. Doingness is what you do. in our society, we're all scrambling to do. What are you doing to motivate your employees? What are you doing to hire more employees? What are you doing to get more productivity out of your employees? And that's the wrong question. The wrong question really is, who are you being in terms of attracting people, hiring people, and developing people? When I say, tell me about your favorite boss, you're not telling me what the boss did, you're telling me who the boss was. When you say someone trusted you and someone challenged you and someone, the expression we use in English, had your back. To have someone's back means that they don't have eyeballs on the back of their head, but they've got someone there in their corner who's looking out for them and will make sure that they don't get hurt. That's what it means to have someone's back. That is all a function of that boss's beingness. It's who the person is. It's their character. It's their caring. That's where supervisors need to focus, not on doing. We're all scrambling all over the place trying to do. The reality is just be a certain way. So let's take a look at the next slide. The next slide, when I'm coaching people, one of the coaches, as an executive coach, I will say, would you want to work for you? And the managers sometimes look at me and they're like, that's a really hard question. And it is, it's meant to be. It's a hard question. Be honest with me. Tell me about that. Would you want to work for you? And so that can beget some very healthy feedback. Another question, question two, if the whole company followed your lead, or if the whole company followed your example, would you be happy with where you took it? And again, it gives people room to pause because it's a tough question. But I really want to get a feel for how they see themselves as leaders. And these two questions, try them in your own company. These tend to work very, very well. Now, one of the things is there's an American poet named Maya Angelou. Some of you may have heard of her. She was very famous, died a few years ago. But she said, people may not remember what you did, and people may not remember what you said, but people will always remember how you made them feel. And that, to me, is the essence of what a favorite boss is. It's someone who it may have been 20 years ago you worked for the person. I don't remember exactly what he said or did. All I know is I adored him. I love that man. He always made me feel special, protected, included. I was always happy working for him. So that's a good prism for us all to think about. Now, there's another American author. He's a spiritual author. Neil Donald Walsh was the author of a book called Conversations with God. And his theories were, make of your life a gift. What you want for yourself, give to another. Teach what you choose to learn. And when in doubt, err on the side of compassion. The last thought here, everybody, is one for the rest of this hour, is life begins at the end of your comfort zone. I'm going to tell you guys to try some things that may make you uncomfortable, but I want you to try them. Because again, you don't have to take down the whole house. Your house is fine, but you may want to change some of the bricks in the foundation, and do it slowly and do it at your comfort level, but try some of these ideas because they're universally human. These aren't specific to the United States or Vietnam or anywhere else, but just give that some thought. Okay. Part 3 talks about stay interviews. Remember we talked about that? The counteroffer is too late. That's when the person comes in and says, boss, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. And then the company scrambles. Oh, well, how much are they paying you? And are they giving you a promotion? Because we could do that if you stay here. Terrible idea. Terrible idea. Usually doesn't work. Maybe if the person stays, they stay for a couple of months and then they leave anyway. And it sends the wrong message to everybody else in the company. The message it sends is you have to leave. You have to quit to get anything in this company. So I tend not to recommend doing a counteroffer. There are ways and times when it can be done, but overall, I wouldn't recommend it. The facts, the upcoming turnover tsunami once the pandemic ends. This was in HR Magazine's summer issue. They're calling it a turnover tsunami. There's so many people who are going to be leaving companies. They also have come up with a new word, a sansdemic, sans coming from the French, meaning without people or without qualified people. That's the new vocabulary word these days. And when you look at this, the stay interview is you go to your top performer and you meet with him and you say, Dan, here's the situation. I want to talk with you about your level of job satisfaction now. And I want to be totally honest and transparent. You make a difference around here. We really like the work you do. We see you having a very strong future in our organization. But I want to check with you. I want to ask you certain questions, and And I'm going to ask you to be as open and honest with me as you feel comfortable, but want to make sure that we're meeting your needs because you are doing a great job meeting ours. So let's talk about it. And then you have these series of questions, just as an example. Tell me about your overall job satisfaction. Oh, I'm fine. Okay, well, I'm glad. On a scale of 1 to 10, though, 10 being the highest, where would you put yourself? Well, that's a good question, Paul. I 8, maybe 7 to an 8. Okay, why? Why are you an 8? Well, I'm an 8 because blah, 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 blah. Okay, what would make you a 10 at this point? Well, if I could do, see, and all of a sudden now they're telling you about where that gap is. And that's what the whole goal of the exercise is. There are other questions. Tell me about your ability to do your best work every day. How well is that happening? Tell me what's most important to you on the following scale. And this scale I've given out on a piece of paper, and I just give it to them. And there's 6 different criteria, and I walk them through it and I talk to them about it. Is it career progression? Do you want to assume broader responsibilities? Are you looking for new technical skills, training, certification? Do you want to become a stronger leader? Do you want work-life balance? Is it money or compensate? Where are you? But I want to talk to them about this because I want to know. Now, some employers will say, I don't want to know because if he asks for more money, that's not good. And I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to talk about that. The reality is, do it now, especially with your top performers. Don't wait till they give notice. That's the mistake that too many employers make. You know, the symbol of the monkey who's covering his ears and he's covering his eyes and he's covering his mouth. He doesn't want to know. That won't work. Not in today's environment. There's too much competition for talent. You have to get in there and talk. And I think that piece of it is very, very important. So let's talk about the onboarding. In the United States, we're not good at onboarding as a general rule. We tend to hire the people, which is great. And then on the first day of employment, they start with us. They fill out all their paperwork. And we're done. Off they go. And we never, as a company, whether it's the human resources department or it's the senior administration, we don't do follow-up. And the follow-up is really critical for 2 reasons. Number one, the check-in allows you to make sure you know what's going on with this person. But B, it sets up a quarterly, it sets up a rhythm of expectation of communication and feedback, because I'll show you in just a minute, that expectation will extend to their professional and their career development. So 90-day onboarding, you sit with them on day number 30, roughly, okay, about a month in, and you spend time with them. Now this can be their supervisor, this can be their department head, this can be human resources, this can be the owner, this can be whoever it is, but it's a chance to sit down and say, you've been here 30 days, tell me how you're doing. Tell me what's going well, and tell me where we can give you additional help. Now, that means a lot to new hires. It's a quiet room. It's a quiet meeting. It's not going back and forth, running through the aisle of the, managers tell me, I know how he's doing. I work with him side by side every day. No. This is a different meeting. And especially when it starts to talk about professional and career development, which we'll get into by about day number 90. This is not a meeting that you have open in the floor. This is a quiet meeting behind closed doors. And that's how you talk about this. But these are some examples of questions. Have you faced any unforeseen surprises? What typically stands out in terms of capturing your first full month with us? How have you enjoyed it? What can I help you with? Okay, fair enough. It's a 15-minute meeting. It doesn't last long. But the fact that you took the time to listen means a lot to people. So again, it's a check-in, but it's also goodwill. Okay, now on day 60, it's a little different. Now they've been here for 2 months. The questions are a little deeper. They're a little more pointed. Look at the ones in red. Compare the organization to what we explained it would be like when you initially interviewed with us. Have you experienced any surprises or disappointments that you're comfortable sharing with me? I also ask, how have your relationships with your peers developed over the last 60 days? Have you been made to feel welcome? And do you think you've made others feel welcome in partnering with you and seeking out your advice? Now I'm going to get more into the human connection. I want to see, when you have a problem and you deal with your boss, how does it go? And who among your peers is stepping up to help you? Who's the person you come to rely on the most? These are the kinds of things that at day 60 really start to make a difference. Now, day 90 is a little different, and day 90 is a pivot. Day 90 is really critical. So again, day 90, the questions are, again, which coworkers have been most helpful since you arrived? The goal, pinpoint which employees can be influential in retaining new hires. In certain organizations, this alone is what tells a company where their next leaders are going to come from. It's how well they help with the onboarding, how supportive they are of new hires. They stand out among their peers. And this is a healthy thing for them, and it's good for the new hires. Some companies have what we call a buddy system or an ambassador system, where when a new hire starts, the new hire is paired with someone on the team who's more senior. That's a good opportunity for the more senior person to show leadership and to grow leadership skills. But it's also a sheltered transition for the new hire, because the new hire comes in and has someone who's right there to help side by side. That's not the supervisor. It's just someone who is a peer who has more tenure and more experience and is willing to help. Tell me about leadership communication. In retrospect, what could we have done differently in terms of setting your expectations appropriately for working in our company and for in the job that you're in? These questions are important, and it starts this rhythm: 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But 90 is critical, because 90 is what I call a pivot. It's a change in direction. At the end of the 90-minute meeting, what you say to the person is, Mia, I'd like to meet with you again in 90 days. This will be at your 6-month mark to establish your goals for the quarter and for the rest of the year. I'll expect you to schedule the time with me going forward on a quarterly basis to see how you're progressing towards your goals and how you're doing in terms of your professional and your career development. But you manage this process. You're in control. I'm here to help. I'm here to coach. I'm here to mentor. But it's your responsibility to prepare for this, to prepare the materials, and we'll discuss what you want, whether it's your goals or your professional development. It's our time to sit down and talk, but you have to set the time on my calendar. Treat them like adults. These are not children, and you don't have to hold their hands, but you have to set the expectation. And the expression we use in English is you have to make the space for this. In other words, you have to make it safe for people to do this. You have to tell them, I will allot the time on my calendar. Now, some managers are going to say, I don't have time to do that. And my answer is, you don't have time not to do that. Because if you're not doing these things, these people don't know how they're doing on day 30 versus day 90 versus 6 months in. And because they don't know, remember, they'll leave. The young generation hasn't seen tenure and longevity. When I was a little boy, my father worked for the same company his whole life. My generation, I'm the youngest of the baby boomers, but the baby boomers and the Gen X, what we saw is companies falling apart, offshoring, outsourcing, mergers and acquisitions. People were laid off constantly. So we kind of lost the trust with having one company be your employer for the rest of your life. But now the youngest, the 25-year-olds and under, they don't see any of that stuff. So they're very entrepreneurial, which is good, but you need to keep them entrepreneurial in your company and pull from their creativity and pull from their innovation. But they need to stay there long enough so that you're constantly not scrambling through staffing. That institutional knowledge is really, really important. Okay, so then we go to quarterly IDPs, which we're going to talk about in a minute. This is what you do with the 6th month, the 9th month, and the 12th month. But I think there were some questions. Mia, are there any questions that you wanted to ask real quick?
Yeah, it's all good.
No good? Okay, all good? Okay, yeah. Fine. So let's look at the quarterly. This is going to be the 6-month mark or the 9-month mark, preparing for the annual review. What I've always told my employees is the annual performance review consists of 3 quarterly reviews plus the annual review. Okay, if that makes sense. The annual review is not a one-time event. It's a 4-time event. We meet in Q1, Q2, Q3, and then we have the annual review. Set that expectation early and put the burden on the employees to be responsible for their own professional development. Okay, so let's take a look. When it comes to IDPs, and there's a lot of slides on this, you can study this on your own. The problem I see with managers is they don't know how to handle the IDP meeting. They sit down with the employee and they say, so Mia, how are you doing? And Mia says, I'm doing fine. Good, good, that's great, that's great. Do you need anything? No, I'm good. Okay, and that's the end of the meeting because they don't know what to ask. This becomes a problem. And so you have to, as an author, you want to write these scripts out so that people can see these are the types of questions that you should be focusing on. So first one, what are you focusing on now to build your resume and your LinkedIn profile? Okay, that's a very honest, transparent question. In the past, employers did not ask that question because they didn't care. What I'm saying today is for you to be a real mentor and a coach to your employees, you have to help with professional and career development. We know this is what they want. This is the most studied generation in the history of humanity. We know what Gen Z wants. We know what the Gen Y millennials want because they are studied so intently. Now you know what they want. Don't say, well, I don't care what they want. That doesn't make sense, but do this wisely. See what's so, do what works. We know what they want. Let's turn it to an advantage in our own company. Number two, how are you measuring your achievements and your accomplishments and turning them into bullets for your quarterly and annual review? The bullet is, on a piece of paper, they may have 3 or 4 bullets of their achievements and their accomplishments. How can I help you expand your professional network, build stronger technical skills, or help you gain greater organizational exposure? It's a great question to ask someone. I mean, that's like, wow, I've never had a boss ask me these things. So even if you just use these 3 questions, that's enough for an individual development plan meeting. Because again, if they set their goals, they sit with you, they go over their goals. This is where they're doing well in their head. This is where they're falling behind or they hit a roadblock and they need your help. But if you don't sit down and make space for this, if you don't make the room for them to be able to have that relationship with you, this won't happen. And this is where the wisdom comes in. This is why as leaders, we want to create that space where people can motivate themselves. Motivation is internal. I cannot motivate you and you cannot motivate me. My job as a leader is not to motivate. My job is to create an environment where people can motivate themselves. See the difference? It's subtle, but it's important to understand that. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be a certain way. And in this case, the wisdom tells you, create that space for them to be able to motivate themselves and work with their leader as a coach and a mentor. Okay, more questions. I've got a couple of slides, so we don't have to spend too much time on this. Look at the red one. How do you feel you're doing performance-wise? Do you feel you're doing your best work every day? What could we be doing differently to support you more? That's a very, very good question. And again, the green at the top, what would you like to discuss today? Have you prepared anything you'd like me to review? Could be your resume, could be your productivity spreadsheets, your graphs, your charts, your tables. People have different kinds of indicators of how they're performing. Ask them what they're preparing and what they want to talk about. Next, are you on target to meet your goals? The blue is important. What can we quantify in terms of increased revenue, decreased expenses, or saved time? Everyone, it depends on the level of people that you supervise. But if you supervise managers and people who are analytical types of employees, help them determine the dollars and the percentages that they are saving the company or making in terms of revenue. That's good for their resume. That's good for their LinkedIn page. It creates an achievement mentality. I want my people thinking about achievements all the time and not just gaining the achievement, but measuring the achievement. And in a space like this, you can do it as their coach and their mentor. And it's so easy. And sometimes I find managers stiffly resist this. This is fun. This is the fun part of leadership. So anyway, the red question, how can I help you in terms of providing the right amount of structure and direction and feedback throughout the quarter? The next question, from a coaching and mentoring standpoint, what can I do to support you further in terms of your professional and career development? You're getting an idea, but these are the types of questions that you can be asking in these quarterly meetings. And as you can see, there's plenty of them. And even if you only have 3 or 4, that's enough. But do it, make the space, give them time to sit with you, make yourself a gift to them as their mentor and their coach, okay? I think this is the last slide. The orange one, if you could choose one thing to focus on during our next individual development plan meeting in about 3 months, what might that be? Always helping them think ahead. What should you're building on your goals. Now that you've achieved this, where do you want to go 3 months from now? What are you going to focus on once we get there? So that's kind of the mindset. Okay, now self-evaluations. When it comes time to annual performance reviews, employees in the United States hate them, but the managers hate them more. They're only done once a year. They're done on a piece of paper, maybe using a computer. But the bottom line is the employees feel judged. The managers feel uncomfortable. And that's because they do it as a once a year exercise. Many employers have said, we're not going to do performance reviews anymore. Instead, they're using apps. There's an app that gives great feedback to people, live, on the spot, real-time feedback. That's good, but it's not the answer. An app is only designed to give good information, positive information. An app is not designed to give negative information or constructive feedback. Even if you had an app that could do that, don't use the app for that. There are certain things that have to be done in person. You cannot delegate to an app to give negative information to other people. So understand that an app is fine for increasing employee recognition and that sort, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. But it doesn't replace the feedback from the immediate supervisor. The glue that binds someone to a company is their relationship with their boss. It always has been, it always will be. And as a manager, you cannot delegate that to an app. And as an employee, you're making a mistake if you're thinking that it's not important and that you'd rather just have an IDP from your manager, excuse me, that you'd rather only do an IM, an instant message from your manager rather than talk to the person. There's an expression in English called open the spigot. It means when you turn the handle, all the water comes out. I'm all about that. I'm about relationships. And again, to the degree that you feel comfortable, that you feel like it would work in your company or in your culture, turn it up some, okay? That's my best advice. Because once they have more of a connection to their boss, they're not gonna run. They won't run because they know they can't find that anywhere else. Now that they've been around 24 years old, they may have had 2 or 3 different jobs. They're running. What's going to stop them is the relationship with their boss. That's the wisdom. And if you can come from that wisdom, I think you can make a real big difference. The self-evaluation is very simply 3 questions. When the employee is working with me throughout the year at the quarterly meetings, they're working towards the annual review. When they do the annual review, I want them to do their own first. I want them to present this to me. And that's a separate meeting. And then this is a 15-minute meeting. And then when we meet for the performance review, that takes usually a half hour to 1 hour, depending. But I want the employee to have the first word. The first question of the 3 is this: address your overall performance track record for this review period. Highlight your achievements that have resulted in increased revenue and decreased expenses and saved time. Again, achievement mentality. Why is our organization a better place for your having worked here? How have you had to reinvent the job in light of our department's changing needs? Have you had an opportunity to offer creative and innovative suggestions and programs that can promote our organization? How would you grade yourself in terms of your work quality, your reliability, your production, your teamwork, your technical skills? Whatever you want to do, basically. The first question is all about self-assessment. I want to know how they feel they're doing and they're performing. And if you've set this up the right way at the quarterly meetings, this will be very, very easy at the annual review. Now, question 2, in what areas do you need additional support, structure, and direction? Specifically, where can I, as your supervisor, provide you with additional support in terms of your personal and career or professional development? Whether that means acquiring new skills, strengthening overall performance in certain areas, preparing for your next move in career progression, what can I do to help? And again, that is selfless leadership in action. That is where you're basically telling your employees, I want for you what you want for you. Not, I want for you what I want for me through you. There's a difference. You're there. It's a selfless leadership. You're putting the other person's needs first. But you think about it, if you were on the receiving end of a boss who did that, wouldn't it make you feel more loyal? Wouldn't you feel more trust towards that person? Would you be in a rush to go somewhere else for a 15 or 20% increase in your salary? Not necessarily. The money is nice, but at some point, I want to work for someone who's helping me grow in my career. And that's not outside the realm of possible. It's actually fairly easy to do if you're using the right expressions. And you, again, as I say, make room for it. You have to allow the employees to have time to do that. The third question, what are your goals for the next year? And what are the measurable outcomes? So we'll know you'll have reached those goals. Every self-assessment basically asks these 3 questions in one form or another. These are healthy questions, but it shows respect to the employee. because it allows the employee to give feedback, to share insights, and to motivate themselves. That's what this is about. Remember, motivation is internal. Your job is to create an environment where people can motivate themselves. This is one way to do it. Those quarterly review meetings, that's one way to do it. The extended onboarding program, that's one way to do it. By asking the right questions in the interview process so that they understand what your values are in terms of professional and career development. Again, that's the right way to do these things. Okay, good, we're almost done. The end goal, self-motivation. All motivation is internal. It's not your job to motivate others. However, you are responsible for creating an environment in which people can motivate themselves. Okay, we talked about that. Second issue, accountability. Treat people like adults. Shift the responsibility for career and professional development back to your employees where it rightfully belongs, but make space for it in your day-to-day leadership activities. So my point is, if you're saying to them, I want to meet with you once a month, once a quarter from this point forward, but it's your job to set the time on my calendar. It's your job to prepare the agenda for the meeting. It's your job to prepare the materials that show me how you're doing towards meeting your goals. And you're more than welcome to bring along your resume. We can look at your LinkedIn profile together, whatever you want to do, but you are in charge. That's holding people accountable, and that's treating them like adults. The final bullet there is gratitude. Always come from thankfulness and appreciation. I talk about that with my own children a lot. Life is how you choose to experience it. It really is. The opposite of gratitude and thankfulness is not enoughness. There's just not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough support. There's not enough love. There's not enough, not enough, not enough. The wisdom, again, everyone, is us being able to pass the knowledge on to the younger generation so that they know what's important in terms of what they value. And I think that's what makes someone your favorite boss. It's like the person passed along their wisdom. Come from gratitude. What are we thankful for today? Just working for this company, we should all be thankful for, But what is it in your life that you're thankful for? These are the kinds of things that, again, as leaders, again, we're not holding their hands. I'm treating them like adults, but I want to experience work a certain way as an adult. I've been doing this stuff for over 30 years. I want to have fun. I want to laugh. I want people to get along, and I don't want drama. Drama being the English word for headaches, problems, complaints, and everything. I don't like that. That's why I wrote all the books. Cut down on the drama. I don't want drama. But in my own workplace, I don't want it either. And I think when you teach people to come from gratitude, it just creates a different environment. They experience it differently. The end goal, create a foundation where you're someone's favorite boss, their internal coach and mentor. And the selfless leader, the expression is paying it forward. In English, we talk about paying something back, but there's also something about paying something forward. If you've had a great boss, you be that to someone else. Second bullet, create an expectation and a rhythm of achievement, modeling the leadership behaviors that your subordinates will need to excel in their own careers over time. That rhythm of achievement is really, to me, one of the most important things. Number 3, practice selfless leadership, putting others' needs ahead of your own and expecting them to respond in kind. Again, there's the expression, have people's backs. In other words, they trust you to know that you've got their best interests in mind. Make it self for people to make themselves vulnerable in a healthy sense. If any of you would like to learn more about vulnerability, Professor Brene Brown did a TED talk called The Power of Vulnerability. Look it up if you ever want. It's 18 minutes, but it's wonderful. And it talks about the importance of vulnerability in the workplace in creating a trusting environment. Expect employee retention to improve, since no one wants to leave a selfless leader and mentor for a 15 or 20% salary increase elsewhere. They know they can't find that kind of experience or career fulfillment anywhere else other than in your organization. And this is the model that I think is going to be the go-forward leadership model. It is a selfless leadership model. The article that Mia talked to you about, the selfless leadership, was an essay written in 1970. It's 50 years old. It is more relevant today than it was 50 years ago. And that's why I wrote that article. Anyway, my contact information is here, including my website, my email, and my LinkedIn profile. You're all more than welcome to send me a LinkedIn invite if you would like to. And at this point, I will turn it over to Mia for questions and answers.
Thank you, Paul. Let me, okay. So you can stop sharing your screen and
All right.
going back there. There you go. So thank you so much for this really meaningful sharing
My pleasure.
and also really practical questions that we can have and we can use and we can apply right away. So our interviews, they interview and also the for the 90 days onboarding. So I totally agree with you. I don't want drama at work. And also like if the employees have connection with the boss, our connections with the leaders, they can run away. And me as well. I mean like those questions are really good to ask. Even that like I mean, you don't have the experience on it, but you can practice it right away. Yeah. So there are a lot of questions for you. So I think this first question is really cool to ask you. Is that like people say that people say that interviews are two people lying each other. Employer lie candidates about their companies, and candidate lie about the employer about their true selves. So how do you think about that? What is your point of view? And like, if
Wow, is
it's
that
true,
pessimistic? Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
Sure.
And if it's true, so how can we minimize that gap?
Okay, I wouldn't say that it's two sides trying to lie to one another. I wouldn't look at it that way. The way I've always looked at it, everyone, is this: there is no such thing as a perfect job or a perfect company, and there's no such thing as a perfect candidate. If you're looking for perfection, it doesn't exist. Usually, what I tell employers is when you're hiring, you're probably looking for 70 to 80% fit. It's okay if they're not 100% fit because the learning curve is important. People want to learn new things. They want to add new skills to their resume, so they don't have to have 100%. And as a matter of fact, I tend not to hire 100% because there's not enough challenge there. But
Mm,
hiring someone in that 70 to 80% range is important. The other thing I'd say to that, Mia, is this: when you approach the interview in a selfless way, asking some of these questions that we've talked about, people naturally respond in kind. That's the whole idea about selflessness. That's when you're going to have someone who says, you know, Mia, I normally don't say this in an interview, but that's because that they're speaking with their heart at that point. So again, you could make a pessimistic statement that says it's lies on top of lies on top of lies. You could, but you can also change that in your own world. That may be the whole world around you, but that doesn't mean it has to be your experience. I think if you make it safe for people to make themselves vulnerable, and if you're honest and you tell, listen, it's not a perfect company and it's not a perfect job, I will tell you more about what it's like working here. But first, I want you to be honest and comfortable telling me about you. And if it's a good fit, then that's wonderful. But I have been in situations where I've talked candidates out of coming to my company. It's the person who we brought in for a senior financial analyst job, and he's currently a senior financial analyst at his current company. And when I say to him, so tell me, what's your reason for leaving? I think I want to make a change because I've been there for 8 years. And I say, well, what happens if you stay in your current company? What's going to happen? Well, my boss is going to retire next month. Yeah. And well, there's a chance I would get the job. Then why are you here? Well, you know, and then I'll tell them, stay with your company. I don't mind being that coach. I'll stay there. See if you can get that manager job. You'll have more longevity in your company. It looks great on your resume. And then 2 or 3 years, if you want to make a move, then do that. But get that job. So I'll talk to people. I feel like it's total honesty. And you get so much more out of people when you're that way. So again, I don't want to sound naive, Mia. Not everyone is going to look at the world the way I do, but I choose to experience the way I do. And I've had very little turnover on my teams throughout my career. I've had almost no turnover. They don't leave. Sometimes I wish they would. They don't go. And there's a reason
Wow.
why, though. And I think if they like working for their boss and they trust their boss, it just makes life that much easier for everybody.
Oh my God, I mean that this is a dream for the human resources department as well as the companies that you beg people to live, but they not live, and the turnover rate is really low. I mean, this is kind of a dream.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because I totally agree with you because like be nice, be kind because you're an employer, be nice, be kind, and be honest to the candidates as well. I mean, be honest about the environment, about the job, so that you don't have to waste the time that when they come and then you figure out that they both belong together. Yeah,
Right.
this is a waste of time. So be nice, be kind, and be honest as much as you can about the job, and not really pessimistic, but really honest, just honest, like
Hmm.
right.
Right.
Yeah. So another question is like there are many great questions highlighted to provide insights. So what is your favorite questions to ask to ensure that you can be your team members' favorite managers? This is a question from Mr. Tai.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Again, I've used it several times in the presentation, and I'll usually tell them, what can I do to help in terms of your professional and your career development? Now, you can say that in whatever terms you're comfortable with. But remember when we saw the slide that said, here's what they're looking for in the United States, here are the top 5. And we said that's actually very close to what they were looking for in Vietnam. And the logic is because it's universal. It's not that much different. I mean, we're different people, and I understand that, but people are people. I've worked in different industries and different sizes of companies in different parts of the country, and I've done international too. People are people. And when a manager can say that sincerely, what can I do to help? Tell me how I can, it changes relationships because it's so selfless and it's so caring. And the best way I explain it is, if your boss, now I'm talking to you as leaders, everybody if your boss said that to you, would you feel like that's a really nice thing to say? I really appreciate it. Or would you say my boss is an idiot? I mean, you're not. You're going to say that was really nice. He was sincere. He wants to help me. And as soon as you feel that someone wants to help you, either your mind thinks, well, he's vulnerable, so I'm going to go after him in a negative way, or your mind says, that's nice that he wanted to do that. I appreciate that he asked, and I'll think about it. But I do think it was a nice thing to do. Most people are good people in their hearts. They'll take that kind of change very quickly, very quickly. And all of a sudden, you can change your leadership style immediately. That's the fun thing about leadership. It's your ecosystem. This is your world. Now, I've had managers who say, oh, but on top of me, the CEO yells and screams and curses, and you expect me to be nice to my employees? And my answer is yes. It has nothing to do with what's going on over your head, and don't use that as an excuse. If you think now you can go and yell and scream and curse at your employees because your CEO boss is doing that to you, you're wrong. And by the way, you're going to get in trouble. The CEO does not get in trouble because the CEO is a CEO. But if you do that behavior, you're going to be in trouble. So don't make excuses. You experience the leadership ecosystem that you want to put in place at any time in your career, not just where you are right now, at any time in your career. You build your team, you build your department, you build your division. And if you become a CEO, you build your company the way you want to experience it. That's the fun part of the whole thing.
Yeah, great. Because like the questions, what can I do for helping you? I receive a lot from them. So this is really great, and this is really great questions in the for the stay interview. But there is another like perspective I received. This is like the really cool questions like to talk about. The questions, what can I do for helping you? So most of the time, the coaching, mentoring questions like how are you going, what makes you feel good or bad, or prevent you from performing your tasks are good. So these questions that we talk about in the stay interview. So, but sometimes I feel like it's a burden to answer those as I'm kind of rearranging all my emotions and feelings. So then what should I do in those modeling situations? And should I just refuse talking to my leader?
Good question, Mia. Mia, you always have good questions. Whoever asks that question is a good question. So there's an expression that I use that I believe in evolution, not revolution. And revolution means everything has to change. Starting tomorrow, everything changes. I don't believe in that. It takes time for a company culture to develop. Even when coworkers are not getting along, it can take a long time for that to happen till they get to the point where they don't talk to each other anymore. And it's going to take some time to get back to the point where they can trust each other or at least talk to each other in a humane and civil way. Evolution makes more sense to me. Evolution says that you can't change everything all at once, because even if you did, people would think it's insincere. The reality is, like I say, you don't need to change the whole house. Just look at some of the bricks in the foundation and swap out some of those bricks. And some of the activities that we talked about here, you can use in different scenarios. But one of the things I will talk to managers about is you can sit with your team. If you want to go the route of revolution, you can sit with your team and say, hey, everyone, I want to try something brand new. And that's okay. It's just not my style. I'm not someone who sits in front of people and says, we've been working together for 10 years, but starting today, I want to do something totally different. I think they need to see it more than hear it, if that makes sense. Demonstrate it, be the role model, and it will naturally take on its own form over time. So yes, you can talk about it, and talking about things is important, but they have to see that you live it, that you live those values more so than just talk about them.
Yeah, and it looks like this is a good discussion that Dan is asking, like, can I have a question? Okay, Dan, your turn.
Okay. Well, first of all, I know we're already a little bit into the Q&A, but Paul, thank you for all your sharing. I think that was really, really valuable for everyone here. And I can say, seeing the kind of questions that are coming in, it's clear that it's triggered a lot of thoughts from people. And one of the questions that was asked by one of the attendees is about how can we shape a no drama culture when the team was onboarding for 2 months already? Are there any examples? And I think it kind of like points to maybe a bigger question, which is that, you know, how do you kind of do this while the company is already in progress? How do you do this while you know, you maybe have tried a few things already and you're kind of like trying to constantly optimize the culture? How do you do it when that whole kind of machine is in process? You're kind of maybe like, especially in smaller companies, kind of like building the plane as you're flying. So, oh, now
That's
I'm already 2
exactly
months
it.
into my onboarding. What do I do now? Do I all of a sudden like reverse back, tell people to, hey, you're starting a new onboarding tomorrow? Or like, how do you tackle that?
Dan, you use the expression I was going to use. The expression we use is always, you know, you're building the plane while you're flying it. And the picture that it creates is, well, we're flying it, but it's not built yet. But how do we do this? And it's very frustrating and it's hard. And what I would say is this: the expression I always use is calm the room. We need to calm the room down. You don't have to make this perfect. You don't have to have a perfect start. You just have to start somewhere. It's not, we're human beings. And don't look at it like, oh, but this group is already 2 months in and I want to reinvent it. What happens if that group is 2 years in? Well, what happens if they've been with you for 10 years as a team? Does that mean you can't turn it around? And the answer is, of course you can. Of course you can. So do it wisely. Share as much as you're comfortable sharing. Role model those changes yourself. Focus more on doing this rather than, or excuse me, focus more on beingness than on doing this. I do really mean that, you guys. I think that is the biggest problem on the globe right now, is people are running to do things, when the reality is to become someone's favorite boss. It's really just a matter of how you make them feel. They'll figure out the rest of it. So that's what I would say, Dan. Evolution, not revolution. No, you don't have to start all over again with a perfect start. Just figure out, what is it that I want to change starting tomorrow? Pick one thing. And then maybe by next week, you'll add a thing. And then maybe 3 months from now, you'll have 3 or 4 things. Let that take traction. And you be the first domino, is the expression I use. You be the role model. You go first. And when people see you do it, they'll naturally fall in place, because that's where they want to be anyway. Everyone wants to work for a leader like that. So those are my best thoughts on that one.
So you can step up and kind of be the catalyst that then changes things from the inside.
Correct.
That's great. Yeah. There's another question here that talks maybe about something that's kind of tangential to that. Who should be responsible for conducting the stay interview? And again, if I could link it to a higher theme, it's probably, all of this sounds great, but you know, we also know that the HR teams are always the busiest already. Who's going to do all of this? Right? So like,
Okay, so
who's going to do all of this work?
Well, again, here's my thought, Dan. It's a good question. I'm not trying to give people more work. I'm trying to reuse their time a little bit differently. This investment of time is worth a lot more. It gives you a greater return on your investment. So think about cutting out certain other things, but make this part of what you're doing. What I would say is, it's not ideal for HR to do that. These meetings are, I would say, should stay within the department. So if you report to a manager, the director should do it. If you report to a director, the vice president should do it. If you report to a vice president, the senior vice president should do it. It's like a skip level meeting, but keep it in. Now, if the vice president who's doing that meeting finds something of concern, then he or she can bring it to human resources, and that's fine. But I think really build that muscle from within. I don't want new hires getting used to going to human resources when they have a problem. I want them to know how to fix it themselves within the unit and then escalate within the unit. So again, you can have the immediate supervisor do it, but they work with the supervisor day by day. You need someone who's above that level, ideally, and someone within the same unit, department, division, whatever it happens to be. That would be my recommendation.
Great. Yeah, that sounds really helpful and really practical, I think, for people to get into it. You know, I think especially in this kind of community, in this group here, there's probably a lot of passion for improving things and creating better work experiences and, you know, making it more people focused, people centered. But then there's always that second part of, okay, how do I get everyone along? You know, I may be super passionate about this, but how do I get the directors excited? How do I get the managers excited? And for a lot of them, it will feel like extra work. It's like, oh, yet another thing I have to do. You know, we've had this discussion internally about, I don't have time to do one-on-ones. Like, if you're not doing one-on-ones, then how are you managing, right? So like, shouldn't that be part of the fun? Like you said, shouldn't that be part of, you know, just basically how you're actually getting the most out of your team and working with people and making them excited to be part of it? So it maybe is a bit of a, you know, perspective shift that someone then who is that person in the company that can drive that. Maybe the people on this call who can then be that kind of like catalyst inside.
Dan, I totally agree. And the idea being that, you know, I don't have time is always your number one response. You know, you're always going to hear that. And the truth of the matter is it's never been done to them. And they don't know what it looks like when it's working.
Yeah.
And the other problem is they don't know what to say. They don't know what questions to ask. So again, arming them with the questions will make them feel more comfortable to begin with. And once it starts to click, they'll be like, oh, I should have been doing this all along. But again, everyone's running. The thing about Dreamplex, which really impresses me so much as an organization, is you've thought the whole thing through in terms of creating the right kind of environment for where people can work and feel comfortable and give their best. And that's great. But you also have to have that human connection. The human connection is still, you know, critically important with their immediate supervisor and with their peers.
Yeah, I think a really big part of the reason why, you know, we're inviting people like you in to kind of share more directly with the people that, you know, have their teams in Dreamplex or hopefully one day we'll have their teams in Dreamplex, is that we can do a lot. We do know that, you know, from a product development perspective, we can do a lot to influence the environment that people are working in. From, you know, the design, we may spend up to like a year and a half before we open a new location, because we spend so much time really thinking through what should an office look like. And it's not just about like what painting is on the wall or what material do we use. It's really much more strategic and functional, and thinking about, you know, like what kind of environment does someone have to be in, what does influence someone feeling about coming into a space, and like all these kind of like things that whenever you're in a well-designed space you would feel. You know, we can do a lot in terms of the hospitality we deliver, which we do every single day. And we can do a lot in terms of bringing the space to life with, you know, events and activities and all these things. But the reason why we're additionally then having these conversations and supporting companies in these ways is that, but I think at the end of the day, that's all great. And we have to continue to do it. That's our business. But 90% of what someone will feel in terms of do they like coming to work or not will not come from those kind of environmental factors, but will really come from their manager, their director, their leader, and how do they make them feel. And it's an exciting journey to be a part of. And so that's why I think this is so valuable. And I'll just read something that Thijs, who is on the call as well, just said. You know, when we're talking about who should do the work or who should lead this in a company, he said you should also ask the question, what is the cost of not doing it? Right? What way is your company going to go if you're not going to be doing this? Which is another really great thing to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Mia, back to you. Sorry for jumping in.
No, it's okay. Those are great questions. Because like I would love to let Thảo she wants to directly interact with you. Is this okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Hi, Thảo.
Thank you. Thanks, Mia, for inviting me. And well, yeah, I feel alive now because I want to interact and ask questions straight away directly with Paul. Thanks, Paul, for your sharing. I learned a lot from that.
Oh, my pleasure. Sure.
So I'm the leader myself, and I also, well, I mean, throughout a number of times, I was trying to build a healthy culture for the staff in our organization, and I'm still trying to make it as effective as possible to make everybody feel like they are included, they are cared, and so on, right? But I would say that sometimes I do feel drained myself in terms of energy, and I do put a lot of time ahead and learning from different sources to make it as innovative as possible. And sometimes I got demotivated. I was like, hey, yeah, I was trying to do many things. It works, but then at the same time, I feel tired of it. And when all works and jobs come at the same time, we need to run with the deadline, right? And so on, right? And I do not have time to actually make it happen as I was planning. So I think I was thinking a lot about that. And I also encounter a number of difficulties and challenges when I'm trying to bring motivation or bring inspiration from other people to myself to do the work. And I found that being a great leader or good leader is a hard work. So is there any advice from you that I can actually see in a different angle to make myself more motivated, inspired, and continue to do the work that we need to do?
I'm afraid that technically you're a human being, because I feel the same way. I mean, it is exhausting, isn't it? It is hard because in very many ways, especially in human resources, we feel like we're the personality of the company, we're the culture, we're the soul. And we don't want people to be disappointed. We enjoy people, which is why we got into the field. But it is very, very difficult when you feel like either you're the only one who's doing the work or no one else is participating and no one else has time. And so this is universally human. What I would say is this. What I've tried to do in the companies where I work is, when I'm new especially, is I tell them, let's get together and have a brown bag lunch. Brown bag means they just put their lunch in when they make it in the morning, and you bring your lunch bag to the room, the training room, and we sit and we talk and we go over different topics. I don't make it mandatory. I don't want them to feel like they must go or else they're going to be in trouble. What my experience has been is make it voluntary, and a few people come, but then the next time more people come because they hear it's really, really good. And then they want to come for the advice and they want to come for the guidance. And in that way, you don't have to feel like, I'm telling them they have to go, but they're not showing up. And I don't have any disciplinary authority, because truthfully, in human resources, we don't. I mean, we only have disciplinary authority over our own employees, but I technically can't fire someone else's employee unless they agree. So the point is, go slow. Don't rush too hard. I mean, there's a part where you have to have a balance. It's not all going to change. And Lord knows, in today's day and age, things happen so quickly. And I'll take you back to COVID. I mean, look what happened with the COVID over the last 18 months. I haven't done much human resources, but boy, I'm good. I know how to handle quarantine issues and isolation units and lab tests. I became a very, very successful human resources person, not doing much in terms of human resources in the last year and a half. We have to have that flexibility. So know that your heart's in the right place, but be able to compartmentalize. And compartmentalize means that you can work on one thing, but then put that down and then go home and enjoy the weekend, or stop at the end of the night and go home and enjoy yourself and have some downtime. We all have to find that balance. We have to learn to say no, unfortunately, and that's not easy, but we get it. And I've been doing this longer than most of you on this call. I'm a little bit better at it than you because I've had more practice, but know that it's there and know that you'll have that opportunity to do so. So good for you. I think you're thinking this through very well, and it's a very healthy approach, and you'll find your balance. We all do.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
Sure, of
I
course.
will do my best.
I have every faith in you. Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Hal, for these interactions. And we have a lot of questions coming, but unfortunately, it's out of time. And I know that you have a lot of like when you like receive a lot of information from Mr. Paul for today. I know that you have a lot of questions in your head, but don't worry, because like Mr. Paul say, feel free to add his LinkedIn and also feel free to to send him an email to send him the questions, so you will still have a chance. Otherwise, you can add my LinkedIn or Dan LinkedIn to deliver those questions to Paul. That's totally fine. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much, Paul, for delivering such a really great webinar.
Well,
So
my pleasure, Mina. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Mina and Mia, great job because you put it all together. It's very impressive, young lady. You've done a great job.
thank you so much. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Paul, for your time. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And yeah, especially in this time, let's all fight together and let's also all support together as a community. So Tao and everyone else who feels that it's a tough time right now and all the pressure is on your shoulder, just feel free to connect and we can do a brown bag together, online. Because the one thing that probably founders or, senior leaders don't always feel is that there's other people out there like them. You always feel like it's just you and you're the only one experiencing this, but actually everyone is suffering in silence. It's kind of taboo to share about, to talk about, but there's a lot of people who will be in a very similar situation. So we can all connect together and also get each other through this. And hopefully, by TED next year, it will all be way better. So let's do that together.
Yes.
Okay, everyone. Talk to
Bye.
you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Paul, have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Well,
Talk out later. Okay.
Good day and good
Bye-bye.
night. Thank you. Bye
bye,
bye.
everyone.